Hey guys, this is SeetherCord here. Man, that was a really overly enthusiastic way of me doing the intro. It's usually like, hey guys. Instead it's like, hey guys. Oh my god, me with the fake happiness, man. Sounds so flamboyant and gay, oh my god. Anyways, it's me, SeetherCord, and welcome back to another video on this channel. For today's video, we're going to be talking about parenting and opening up to your parents about being a furry and ultimately being a part of the furry fandom. Now, this is kind of an interesting video I want to talk about today because I want to give my advice as to how to really open up to your parents about being a furry if you feel like it's necessary to do, if you ever want to go to a convention or go to meetups or even possibly buy a fursuit, which I'll actually make another video about asking your parents to buy you a fursuit or letting them know about you buying a fursuit in the next video. And also kind of give my own experience of what it was like for me growing up with my parents and really expressing to them that I was a furry and also having my own fursuit. So with that discussed and all out of the way, let's begin. Now to start off this discussion, I'm pretty much going to describe the most obvious thing in the room when it comes to letting your parents know that you're a furry. It's difficult. For many of us, it definitely is difficult. The reason that I say this is because typically we're at the age of about 15 or 16 or so when it comes to being in the furry fandom and joining, and a lot of that tends to come with letting your parents know about that, because I believe that the average age of someone being a furry is about 14, 15, 16, like let's say like starting off early high school, mid high school, teenager. And that's typically around the time when it's kind of difficult to really connect with your parents, because you do get into that kind of rebellious age of your life when you get pretty much this mindset of like, I'm going to do the opposite of what my parents want me to do. Because I'm not going to blame you guys, and heck, I did it myself when I was in high school. I was basically like, man, F my parents, I'm going to do what I want. And as an adult, I still kind of have that mindset, but I am moving away from it. And I realized I was being kind of immature at the time. And again, to my teenage viewers watching and all, because I noticed that you guys make up about 1/8 of my audience or so, or maybe 1/5 to 1/8 of my audience. You guys are immature, but I don't blame you. We're all pretty much immature at that age. And also with joining the furry fandom around the time when you're about 14 or 15, that's pretty much when you're getting near the end, or you're actually in the middle of puberty, and that's when there's a lot of really weird stuff going on with your body and your lifestyle by either being a boy or a girl within the furry fandom. And so kind of having to just deal with all these new emotions and feelings and new ways and lifestyles of wanting to live, and definitely not knowing how to express that to your family and especially your parents, it can definitely be tough. And so I definitely understand if it's difficult for you guys to really open up to your parents about being a furry, if you feel like it's necessary, if you want to either go to a convention or join a furry meetup, or if you're talking with some friends online that are furries, and if you have like a furry profile image on any of your social media, if you have furry art on your computer, or to possibly get on the more touchy side, if there's any furries out there that have more of a kind of, if you know what I mean, special kind of interest in the furry fandom, and if you have some artwork that might not necessarily be the most appropriate thing to talk about on YouTube and your parents find that stuff, it's definitely awkward. And honest to God, I've had that happen to me once, and it was probably the most embarrassing moment of my life. I'm more than likely not going to make a video on it in the future because my parents would kill me if they found out I made a video on that. My parents know that I make furry content on YouTube and they don't really care anymore, but they will definitely care if I make that certain type of video. So don't expect a video on that in the future. They'll kill me, please. But anyways, we pretty much covered the understanding. We're not really going to judge anybody here about having difficulties with letting your parents know about this awkward time in our lives with just puberty and high school and just being a furry altogether, because being a furry, it is weird, it's awkward, it can be embarrassing for a lot of us. So I'm just glad to know that we're not going to judge anybody here. Now, before I get into my advice for you guys about letting your family know that you're in the furry fandom, let's get into what my experience was with it and also kind of describe my parents. To start off, I've never really talked about my family, I believe, on my channel before. Maybe I did at some point, but that was a long time ago probably. And even for the amount of times that I have talked about my family, it's been very little overall. Maybe 1 or 2 videos I've talked about my family to some extent. How do I say this? I have a mixture of both parents that were very strict and also really didn't care, if that makes sense. The reason that I say this is because my parents, when it came to my education and everything, they more so were just had the mindset of don't basically fail and we're fine. I don't care if you like barely pass, just pass and that's okay. But also at the same time, when I did excel in school, at the sometimes that I did, because there were times where I did really bad in school and there were times that I did amazing at school, They didn't really care. It was never really perfect. My family had a really high expectation of me in basically every other field in education. So it was like you needed to get perfection or it wasn't good enough. Like, for example, if my parents would tell me, hey, go do this thing, if I didn't do it exactly 100% the way they wanted to, I would get yelled at. Also, when it came to how to represent myself in my family, my parents did kind of push on me that I am kind of making an impression for the family by how I act. So my parents let me know growing up that if there was any form of misbehavior or bad doing from me, I would get a really bad punishment. And I mean really bad punishment. And my parents never held back on that. I got the belt. I grew up in the South. I got the branch. I got the fly swatter. I got the smack in the face. My parents were the Da Vinci of ass whoopings. But for the most part, I was able to dodge it because I was a very well-behaved kid. My siblings would be like, oh, you're such a goody two-shoes and everything. Why do you try to be the best and all? The only reason I did that was because I didn't want to get my ass beat. And thankfully it worked out for the most part. But I won't deny that the few times that I did screw up and get out of line, the punishments definitely were felt. Another thing that my parents taught me, which I think this was the best thing they ever taught me, was throughout my entire childhood and everything, all 18 years, they pretty much taught me the mindset of you're not special, don't act entitled, you're not always going to get it the way you want to. And I think it's, honest to God, a good example they taught me. So that kind of wraps back in with how if I didn't do things perfectly, they would kind of be like, meh, or they would be like, why didn't you do this perfectly? So to get into when it came time for me finally to admit that I was a furry to my parents, because I kept it on the down low for the most part, but I knew that when I was going to get a fursuit and I wanted to start going to Comic-Con conventions by myself, I had to tell them and they had to learn about it. So when it came finally around the time that I got my fursuit and it came in the mail and everything, they got a hold of it before I got a hold of it though. So they really didn't really have a problem with it that much. They didn't really give me a hard time on being a furry. And the reason for this was because they were more so just glad that I wasn't gay, because there was a time throughout high school where they assumed that I was gay because I'd never had a girlfriend and I never really had any real interest in girls until late high school. So I guess I dodged a bullet there, I guess, with dealing with the whole like having to be a furry and everything with something I actually was rather than being gay, which I wasn't. I would say the only downside to being a furry to my parents and everything was they did have a little bit of a sense of, you know, what are you going to do with that? You're just going to walk around the street with that? And then I was like, no, I'm just going to go to a convention where other people dress up and wear it. And even though not all of them dress up as furries, only a few do, I'm not going to be the only one there that really sticks out. And people aren't really going to be making fun of specifically me, because my parents more so thought that comic conventions were more like nerdy stuff, because my parents are very old-fashioned, plain people. Like, my parents have the same mindset as my grandparents do, being like old-fashioned from the South and everything. So I think it's weird, but they just let me do it because I was pretty much an adult at that point, and I just got to do what I'm doing. And they were like, as long as you're not getting people pregnant or doing drugs, then whatever, you know? So yeah, to this day, my parents still think it's weird that I'm a furry. They still think it's weird that I'm making YouTube videos about being a furry and all. But again, as long as I'm not doing drugs or anything illegal or getting anyone pregnant unintentionally, they're fine with it. I would say that my ultimate advice for letting your parents know that you're a furry and coming out as a furry, it's definitely something that won't be easy for most parents, because still, like, most parents aren't that really open-minded. Most parents are pretty plain and basic with their interests, so they will think it's weird or unusual. And I will say that maybe if you're unlucky, some of your parents who are a little bit more old-fashioned will have kind of a hard time of coping with that, because they're not used to stuff like that. And I understand to an extent, because it also comes with being gay. It doesn't mean that your parents don't love you any less if you come out as gay to them, and if they're not fully accepting of it, because it's something they're not used to and they haven't come to accept yet, which they should, but it won't be an easy thing for them, so I can understand. And the same thing can go for being a furry, because it's not something they're used to seeing a lot, and they don't know exactly what you being a furry means yet until you explain it to them, so they don't know what you're bringing back to the house when you're a furry out and about. I would say just play it off as if it's a cool thing. Like, yeah, it's a thing that me and my friends do. It's nothing dangerous or anything. It's just kind of an expression thing. Especially let them know that it's not sexual if they ask any questions about that, especially if it's not sexual. If it is a sexual thing for you, just lie about it. And don't look at anything illegal now. Don't do that. Don't let them know about that. Don't keep anything questionable on your computer. illegal or not. And ultimately, just let them know that being a furry is a way for you to express your artistic side. It's a way for you to make new friends online and in person. There's definitely a community of furries in virtually any well-populated town that you know. And if not in a well-populated town, you can make some nice, healthy friends online. Especially if you're going to college, there's definitely a furry group in most universities and community colleges. So you can definitely make some friends through that. And ultimately, as long as you behave yourself and don't do anything risky, then I think that they should ultimately over time cope with you being a furry better and accept it. And the last thing I would say is that don't push the being a furry thing on them a lot, which I don't think you guys would, but I think there would be some furries that be like, hey mom, dad, I'm a furry all the time, which might make it more difficult for them to come to terms with it. But as long as you just keep it as a side thing and don't force it onto them all the time, they should be okay with it. So that pretty much wraps up my video today for letting your parents know that you're a furry and kind of just coming out to them about being a furry altogether. How do you guys feel about my advice on being a furry? Do you guys agree on it? Do you guys have any other different methods to how to come out as a furry to your parents? Or is there anything you would like to add to my advice? Let me know down in the comment section down below. If you enjoy my content and want to further help out my channel, please consider donating to me on Patreon as well as my coffee. Also, please consider smashing that like button, turn the notification bell, and subscribing altogether. Also, remember to check out my main gaming channel known as SeetherCord Games and also my no commentary gaming channel known as Seether Chills. All will be linked down in the description down below. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I have been SeetherCord and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye, everyone. Okay. Dang it, I messed it up. Oh, that was horrible. Okay.